Hi, everybody. My name's Lauren. I'm own the Writer's Block Bookstore in Winter Park, Florida, with our new location in Winter Garden as well. I'm here with my good friend Leslie Streeter, who is the author of Black Widow. Um, we have an interesting story, and um, when I was putting this open book series together to interview authors, she was one of the first people that I thought of, because we almost had an event together last year because of the pandemic. Leslie was living in South Florida at the time, and we met at Winter Institute, and I was very excited about her book, and I was really looking forward to hosting her for an event when it came out last March. And unfortunately, the world shut down during the launch of her book. So I'm very excited to have the opportunity to talk to her a year later, find out what she's up to, get some information about the book. I love the book. I love the protagonist. I'm just going to tell a little bit of history about us. We go to Winter Institute, which is a annual book trade show, where authors and booksellers and publishers get together and talk about new books that are coming out in the future. And I was sitting at the bar in the hotel, and I was sitting next to Leslie. And by the time that we were done talking, we were sharing each other's food. So we were both finding out that we were both from the Baltimore area. I'm from Annapolis, and she's in Florida, and she had a great story and a wonderful personality, and I just took a liking to her immediately and just really enjoyed our talk. And it was something that I won't forget. So then now, fast forward, Leslie is the owner. I mean, she used to work for the Palm Beach Post. She just moved back to Maryland. She'll tell us a little bit about that. And she's a writer, and her writing has appeared in Miami Herald, the Oprah magazine, and elsewhere. She's appeared on CBS, Sunday Morning, and NPR last year when the book was being launched. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you to give me what they call like an elevator pitch, just to kind of tell us a little bit about what the book is like and what the book is about and why you wrote it. And then we'll start talking about it.
Fantastic. I used to say my elevator pitch was, it's like the year of magical thinking, but funny and with Black people.
Magical thinking.
Yeah, the Joan Didion book. Yeah, the Joan Didion's book. I said it's like the year of magical thinking, but funny and with Black people. It's a book about grief. It's a memoir about a year of an existence dealing with grief, but mine is funny, and hers is not. Yes, and Black.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah, and it is funny. I love it. It's sort of like, you make humor out of grief, and you want me to laugh with you.
Yeah, exactly.
even though it's we could cry with you as well. So I was kind of I was looking at the book again today when I was getting ready, and because I remember reading it and absorbing it, a year and a half ago, and it is funny. It's definitely a first person narrative, and what I find interesting is that we're there with you. It's almost like you kept a journal during all this happening, because a lot of these things that you talk about are just snippets of things that happen in the course of this tragedy. Yeah. But only, you could forget these minor little things, pretty easily when you're absorbed in the bigger part of the guilt. And it just feels like you went straight to journaling about it as you were dealing with it, and had something, to kind of put together. So tell me, why did you decide to write this book? Is it because you were journaling, or you were trying to deal with the grief, or?
My form of journaling is just to write the book. I'm really bad at journaling, because I feel like as a working journalist for so many years, like it should be a something. So it should be a blog post or a column or whatever. So I had always tried to write fiction, and now I'm working on something fiction, but rewind several years ago, I never could honestly stick with something long enough to make it happen. And a friend of mine, Scott Iman, who is a Hollywood historian, he just had a book come out about Cary Grant several months ago, had always said to me, "You'll finish the book that you have to finish." And the day that my husband Scott died, Scott Iman was in my kitchen, and I said, "I think this is my book." It just came out. And I don't know where that came from. It was the divine or just like I needed something to say. I don't know. But once I said it, I thought, well, why not? So, and he said, "I think it is." So I, about a week later or so, bought a computer so I wouldn't be writing it on the work computer. And I just started writing. I probably started the first chapter, which is the beginning of it, which was the day after my husband died. We were in the graveyard looking for spaces to bury him, and that's the first thing I wrote. And I just started writing. So a lot of it, I wanted to start. I mean, a lot of things kind of, in the editing of a book, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. But so much of it, yeah, I tried to write as close to in real time as possible. And, it gets edited and changed, and, it's probably less angry in some places than it had been. But yeah, I really wanted to get those raw moments. And sometimes when I would start to write something, I would go back to emails I had written or anything I'd written on Facebook, like just, stream of consciousness stuff. I had my form of journaling was also things like I'd be in the line at Publix and I'd start, I would have a thought and I would just start writing. I would just go, oh, let me remember that. Let me remember that. And just so I would go back to it. So if I was writing something and needed to recall and say, I think I wrote something about how that felt in the moment because I wanted it to feel present and raw. Because I think that one of the reasons I wrote the book, other than that I felt I had to, is that people don't know how to talk about grief. And I think that what we get so often is a very kind of either stunted view of it to be comfortable for people, or we get the books that are about the 5 steps of this, a workbook on this, how I got through this. And it starts at the conclusion that you've actually healed, and rather in the really raw parts, because that's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be there. But I think that's the part that's helpful, because every time I talk to people, widows groups of grievers, that kind of thing, they can't see to that part yet. They can see where they are. And when you say, oh my gosh, somebody else relates to the weird parts of this, I think it's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm putting you on the spot now, but while you were talking, I was thinking that your writing is so good, and it is that raw first person with a little bit of humor in it. Is there a place in here I can ask you to maybe read something?
Oh, sure. Let me see real quick. Let me see if I can find.
Yeah, because I mean, you grabbed me like in the beginning with just the very first paragraph.
Okay.
The first couple pages. But if there's something else that you can write, that you can read, it would be great, because it is great.
The very beginning. And if you read the book, guys, you'll notice that the chapter titles, many of them are taken from TV television show themes. So this is The Fresh Prince. This is chapter 1. Now, this is a story all about how my life got turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here, says the nice enough salesman, pointing to the long crypt to his right, your loved one would go in first, with his head facing this way. And when it's time, you would go in head first, so your heads and hearts are touching for eternity. Thanks. Nice enough salesman makes reference to concepts like eternity and togetherness, and how 40 or 50 years from now, the body that used to be me can be placed facing what's left, what used to be my husband, Scott. All I can hear is, your husband is dead. Your husband is dead. Pick a box. Your husband is dead. You'll forgive me for not thinking clearly right now, because my husband very recently dropped dead in front of me while we were making out. And when I say very recently, I mean yesterday. I have to pull myself together and deal with this sometime. Well, right now, probably. But what I really want to do is jump in that golf cart from which my mother is nervously watching me and drive us to the nearest bar. I should be at the Palm Beach Post, the newspaper I write for, finishing a column about the drinks Scott and I were supposed to have as research for a cocktail story. That research was supposed to have happened yesterday afternoon, right around the time our son subbing relatives began landing at the airport. We were supposed to be celebrating the job Scott was supposed to start on Monday before we picked up our adorably goofy baby boy from daycare. Supposed to doesn't mean crap. Very good.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a question. So now I'm drawing a blank.
That's okay.
So I'm going to just jump around now because I had a thought, but I'm just going to go back to another thought and hope that this one comes back. So you're right. You're writing as a journalist, and you just mentioned that you've been trying to do fiction and you're working on fiction right now. Is that what you're doing? What are you doing right now?
What I'm doing right now is a lot of stuff. I'm freelancing for a couple of publications, newspapers and magazines, some regional, some national. I'm working on a second book. I am doing some speaking online, so both book promotion and both straight up speaking and scheduling some of that. I was for 6 months when I moved back here working for a strategic communications firm in DC. That just wasn't me. It wasn't what I was supposed to do. I felt like I'm grateful for it because it gave me a job for 6 months and I got a house and all that other stuff. But what it kind of opened me up to was the sort of like jumping in without a steady paycheck, but things are beginning to come up, just random stuff. Like I'm helping a friend write a book proposal and that's a little money. And I'm helping a friend do a story that will appear hopefully in a local bar association on his website. So, and just kind of open, we've also optioned the book. So we are waiting to see what comes of that. And it's exciting times. And I am open to people, open to the universe. I'm really open to situations in which I can do what I feel is my mission, which is to write about and talk about openly things about grief and race and gender and aging and just other stuff that people don't really like to talk about or that is not talked about in a deep enough way. I mean, I'll be 50 next month. And I find such a freedom in the fact that I don't really care what anybody thinks anymore. So you can be a lot more candid when you're not really concerned about that stuff. So that's all of what I'm doing.
Good. I just remembered what I was thinking about. So the story he just died yesterday and you're picking out a box and it's because he's Jewish and you have to bury him within 72 hours, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of myself when I'm listening to this thinking they don't give you time to mourn. They're like, you got to like go the next day.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, the day that he died, we went to pick out the casket. The next day we went to pick out the gravesite. And we actually extended, I think he died on a Wednesday morning. He was buried Sunday because they were trying to wait till people came down and they couldn't do it on the Sabbath. So they we had that leeway time for people to come in. I mean, we joke in the story that, my family, we're Baptist. You can be on ice for a whole week, a lot of time.
Right.
So it's different. So yeah, that kind of like go. Same thing when Scott's mother died. She passed away on Labor Day 2010, and it's right about the Jewish New Year, and she had to be buried the next day before the book Life played. Yeah, had to be buried. Yeah, and we were like, literally, we were in Florida, and by dinner, at lunch, we were in our apartment, and by dinner, we were in Baltimore, in Pikesville. It was the weirdest thing. We were just like, and so the next day we haven't had time, and literally probably 24 hours after or so she died, she was being buried. And it's a different way of mourning. I know that there's an efficiency to it, and also there's a reason for it. But yeah, it does not give you a lot of time to process anything at all.
No. And then it's all after, the Shiva and having,
which is beautiful. It's a really beautiful tradition. Like I said, I had been in the family for 6 months and knew nothing. Everyone's like, well, you're in the family, you're the matriarch now. Where's this go? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, which is the kosher plate? I don't know. I guess it's that one. and his cousins and aunts and stuff were so helpful. And like the lady from the kosher dairy, they were so sweet. They're like, okay, honey, it's over there. I'm like, thank you.
Was
So,
it here? It was in here in Florida, right? You had to,
well, no,
or did
that
you
was
go
in
back
Baltimore.
up?
No, wait, he was buried in Florida, yes, in Lake Worth. But the Kugel situation and that was up in Baltimore. So
That's probably, I bet you it was my cousin's deli because Lenny's Deli is in Owings Mills in
I
Baltimore.
know Lenny's. It wasn't Lenny's though. There's a kosher one called Milk and Honey, and the other one was called something Mart. They closed. That was in Pikesville. But anyway, yeah. But no, I know Lenny's. I know Lenny's. I've eaten there.
Yeah, that's my cousin.
That's hilarious. Oh, I love that.
I know, it's a small, Baltimore is a very small world, Baltimore.
It's very small.
I mean, yeah,
and
very small world.
It's so funny because almost every person I meet who's Jewish is from that area. Either they may have gone to high school with either my parents-in-law, or we still, oh, have you ever eaten here? Yeah, we're at the Pikes, yeah, whatever. And it's a whole, it was not very far from where I grew up, but it was a world I knew about it, but I never like hung out at Lenny's. And now I've probably had then and like Miller's Deli in Mount Washington. Yeah, I know a lot of
so
them.
Are you did you guys decide if you were going to raise your son Jewish or you're raising him Baptist?
We're kind of raising, I think we had decided, I mean, he was 2 at the time that Scott died.
Right,
The plan had been that we were going to kind of do everything and see what do, because we did, Easter. We had not yet done any sort of like dedication or anything. We were going to do the Jewish wedding ceremony. We didn't get to any of that stuff, but he'd been to Purim, he'd been to the high holidays, he'd been to Easter. Right now he's being raised basically Christian, but with a lot of Jewish, understanding of the religion and of the culture. We've had some really good friends in the before times, who invited us to all the holidays and stuff, and we just actually talked to them on Passover. And we went to a Seder here as well. So we've tried to do that. I mean, I think he eventually will decide what it is that he wants to. Right. But I mean, I am not Jewish, so I do not.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
I can't raise him Jewish because I'm not. I think we would have done a lot more of the mutual, but yeah.
Yeah. So the book, how do you tie in, race into this book and grief and all of that and raising the son and how were you able to tie all that in?
Well, I guess I did it just by telling my story. I mean, when we talk about, meeting, being raised both in Baltimore and having sort of friends that kind of intersected but weren't really the same. And that we had an understanding being from a place like, Baltimore, which is very strong ethnic and racial and religious and cultural identifiers. And so we were both very aware of each. It wasn't like a shock, like Jewish people, Black people, we were raised around, but that, we talked I talked in the book about, sort of, initial people, like people in my family going, oh, so he's Jewish. Is he a Black Jew? No, he's not. Or like having the, talk with the Lubavitcher or rabbi who told Scott not to marry me, who when I met, I was like, I'm gonna shake his hand. I didn't realize you weren't supposed to shake his hand.
That's right.
And he wouldn't shake my hand. And I was like, ah! And Scott goes, no. And he was very nice about it. But I was like, oh, dummy, I'm a dummy. So yeah, so it was stuff like that. And that, just being a visibly interracial couple, that people don't always get it. Even you're standing right there, we would be at restaurants holding hands and you would go, table for 2, no, dummy, I'm literally right there, whatever. Anyway, I just met him a lot. I met him in the line and decided we just 2 birds, 1 stone,
Right.
It's simple. But I mean, mostly the book talks about not just like the things about how we grieve differently, we have different, like we talked about different rituals and that kind of thing, but just basically about the 2 of us I love that even though it was not the same religion that I have and the same faith that I have, I love that he was passionate about it. He loved that I was passionate about mine. And I think that those 2 things sort of meld together because it gave us a common ground and something to learn about, which was wonderful. But also, I think there's nothing that's more a basis of being untethered than a death like that. And I think being to be part of so many different traditions and people lending me their traditions, like, introduced me to the rabbi, or having my sister sing an Amy Grant song at the funeral, which is a whole nother thing. And my, very Baptist, many of them pastors, relatives, they're there, they're like, okay, because they're used to open casket and it's really, really long.
Right.
And the Jewish side is used to, like, it's a half an hour, you do some stuff, do the burial, head back to the house for the Shiva. And so everybody figured it out. Everyone figured it out. And because it's what we were all of those things together. And the burial was those things together. And we did not in time, but probably 6 months after we should have, the headstone unveiling, and that whole funeral thing is such a racket, honestly. That's a whole nother story. It's a whole other story about just literally, when, I don't know if you've ever had to do this, when you go in and they try to sell you waterproofing on a box you were never going to open. Because anything, it's all emotional, because, like, particularly in the Jewish tradition, because literally you're burying grandma tomorrow, and it's like she's still grandma to you, and they're like, well, I don't want the dirt to get
so you have to buy, and you want this, mahogany stained, beautiful, because it's like, they're gonna, like, grab you from the grave, and if you don't, because the guilt is just overwhelming.
And we did pine box, man, because we had actually had the discussion. We're fortunate enough.
The pine box, that's the way it's supposed to be, is the pine box.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. And so we go in, and we're with friends of mine, my friend Shauna, who's Jewish, and Kenny, Scott's cousin, a couple of the people. And so they go into the room, and the pine box is, like, right here. But then ahead of you is those beautiful mahogany and lacquered things that literally look like Cadillacs, that are, like, curved.
Right, like a piano.
Yes. And have the beautiful brass fixtures on them and stuff. And they're like, what about this? And Kenny's like, he'd like that. I go, no. Hear this. Because, you only have a certain amount of money. So I remember, this is so horrible to say, and it's a tangent, but the woman from Cox Enterprises, which at the time owned the Palm Beach Post, who was the benefits person in Atlanta, was so sweet to me. And she said, I want to tell you something. She goes, never tell them how much life insurance you have, because they will try to get you to spend all of it. Just tell them to call me. And if they have a question about whether or not you can cover something, you tell them. She goes, but they will spend every dime of it if you let them. And they would have.
Right. They would have.
It's a business, but yeah, it's a whole thing. And I also felt at that moment, like, if he was there, he would have been really good at, like, cut him off, but he wasn't, because it was for him.
Right.
So that's
I know. Yeah, it's tough. It's crazy. So we have something else in common. We both had children in our 40s.
Yeah.
So, I used to joke, and you're probably going to say this, that you can steal my line. Menopause and raising a teen at the same time.
Well, I'm in the perimenopausal, I think I am. I know I'm at least perimenopausal, but
at 50, like right at perimenopause, like at 50, it's like, I've got no business, it's like your emotions are changing, and you've got a kid whose emotions are changing,
so mine is 7, almost 8, so he's not there yet, but it's still a lot of, like,
in about 3 years, it's going to be, you're going to be in the thick of it, and he's going to be in the thick of it, and you're going to have a really good time.
Oh my God. At the same time, it's so funny, because my college girlfriends, there were 5 of us, and then my sister went to a different school, but there were 6. So literally half, I guess 2 of my friends had kids. They got married in their 20s and had kids, 20s, 30s. And I think the oldest one of that group is like 25. And then the youngest one is like 13. And then there were 4 of us who got married and had kids in our 40s. So all our kids are stair steps. They're 7, 8, 9, and 10. And so it's so funny. We'll get pictures of, like, oh, here's Emily's, graduation photo from, whatever college. And we're like, yeah,
I know.
There's not even in middle school. I think the oldest of ours is not yet in middle school, of the group. And it's so funny, because we're all the same age. We all met our freshman
Oh yeah.
year in college, but we're all like, not even close.
Well, it's funny because one of my closest friends that I went to college with got married in college and had kids in college. And so I invited him to my daughter's baby naming, which is, a breast, but they call for girls, they call it baby naming. So I invited him to the baby naming and he said, I have a conflict. I could either go to my college roommate's daughter's wedding or I could go to your baby naming. Because, and I thought, so I said to him, well, which one's going to make you feel younger? I mean, go to the one that's going to make you feel younger. But it's a hoot, and I will say with advice, this too shall pass, because I think that when you get past that and you're being an older parent, I think that it definitely overcompensates for your wisdom when they're in their later teens, or when they get out of it, when they're no longer swinging from the rafters and thinking you suck, and they're in their late teens and early 20s, you have a lot more wisdom than a young parent would have had. So but so I want, so now I'm gonna, so are you, for the book that you're working on right now, how far are you into it at all? Are you
I'm like, fourth chapter. It's early.
Oh, okay.
It's early.
Okay. So I usually, a lot of times it's a lot of fun, and I do this with all the authors, is I ask a whole bunch of questions, like rapid fire questions.
Do it.
And so you don't have to answer them all because you may not know the answers, or you need some. So if you're not ready to answer it, then just say next, because I have a whole bunch of them and they're funny. So let me find the questions here. So let's see. If you could, oh goodness. If you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
To not worry about thinking you're fat, because you're really not.
That's a good one. Do you have a favorite unappreciated novel?
Oh gosh. He's on my mind now because he just passed away. But Larry McMurtry's Anything for Billy. I went through a very long Larry McMurtry period. I just read everything, and that's his about Billy the Kid, and it's really great. It's not as famous as Lonesome Dove, but I think it should get more love. Yeah.
Well, that's a good one. If you're not an author, what profession would you have? If you were not a writer, let's say writer,
lounge singer.
Journalist.
Lounge singer.
Wow, that's cool. What would you recommend to up and coming authors?
To stop seeing you're aspiring writer and just write. I think people are aspiring to be published or aspiring to be famous, but if you are a writer, if you write, you are a writer. And I think that people should claim that identity and that calling early, and not let anybody talk you out of it.
If you could travel through time, when and where would you go?
I'm a Black woman, so now. There's no other time, honestly, and it's not always great now. So no, I can't. I have no interest in going back to any other time but
now. Is there a future time?
When our voting rights are no longer threatened, and trans people are able to hold their head up. They just today said that trans people are now welcome again into the U.S. military. So for that. And when people stop believing lies that are told to them because it helps keep other people down. Right. That time, that's where I want to go. Yeah.
Do you view writing, and this is probably, I probably know the answer to this question. Do you view writing as a kind of spiritual practice?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you still write on a regular basis, like for fun, or do you journal or write, or is it mostly work related?
Anything from I just wrote a very long Twitter thread, honestly, that I would have been a column any other time, about WandaVision and about reacting to WandaVision as a widow, and sort of from a grief perspective. Yeah. So I
think I need to watch WandaVision, because they were talking about that on the radio today. I guess the series just ended.
Yeah, it's very good.
Let's see. Did you hide, and I know this is a memoir, but sometimes nonfiction authors do this. Did you hide any secrets in your book that where a few people would recognize it? Like any,
Um,
I'm thinking they're the,
Not really. I mean, I think that there were some people that I wrote about that I didn't mention their names, but I told all those people except for one.
mhm.
Because I'm the person not in my life anymore. But everyone I kind of, said, hey, this is you. Because I didn't want to be that person who blindsided somebody and had someone say, hey, so and so. And I don't think the other person that was in it that I didn't talk about would get it. And if they did, I didn't say anything bad. So yeah.
So I think I know the answer to this one too, and I'm going to ask you to elaborate on it a little bit because I'm sure you've had some great experiences. What's been one of your most rewarding experiences as an author of this book? I know that you've probably
Oh my
touched
gosh.
a lot of people.
Um, Probably every, and this is not an exaggeration, at least every other day, someone on Twitter or on Instagram or by email will contact me, or even if it's just like yesterday, I was in a virtual room full of people who had been widowed for less than a year, just to talk about like social stuff, as part of a organization called Soaring Spirits, which is where I was supposed to be at Camp Widow, which they do last year when we were supposed to meet. I was in that area because I was supposed to be in Tampa and then do Oxford Exchange and then do you all at the same time. But I was talking to some people and someone said to me before the presentation started, I read your book. It meant so much to me. Thank you. And that happens to me literally every other day.
That's
And
wonderful.
that is bearing my soul, even though it didn't do what I thought it was going to. I didn't get to do what I thought I was going to yet in terms of tours and travel and appearances and that kind of thing. What it's done was the root of it, which is to reach people who needed to have it. So to me, that's the most rewarding thing.
Um, so, uh, what is your favorite book that you like to give as a gift?
Um, um, Anne Lamott's Traveling Mercies, I used to give a lot. I haven't in a while. I hate to say this. Lately, I've given my book.
Mhm.
But that was, I used to like whatever Dave Barry book was available, I used to buy for people. If I would go into the store and say, what Dave Barry do you have? And I would buy that for people. Yeah.
If you were to organize a literary dinner party, who would you invite?
Oh, living or dead?
Either, yes, living or dead.
Okay, Zora Neale Hurston.
Of course, yeah.
That's the Toni Morrison, although I would be afraid because she was such a sharp wit and could just cut to the quick of things that we afraid that she would think me dumb. Langston Hughes, Carl Hyacin, Dave Barry, Lavia Jaye, Mickey Kendall.
Did you get a chance to meet Carl Hyacin?
I've never met Carl Hyacin. I know people. I'm always like 4 degrees separated from him. I've met Gary several times. I've met Leonard Pitts. I'm very good friends with Liz Balmaceda, who used to work at the Herald, who was a Pulitzer, who now is at the Palm Beach Post. So I was, and his brother, who died, unfortunately, was killed in Annapolis, not very far from here. Yeah, worked at the Post for a while, so I know people who took that quite personally. But no, I've never met Karan. He just retired from the Herald, so a couple weeks ago. So yeah.
So you had mentioned that your book was optioned. So if it was made into a movie, who would you pick to play the lead?
Oh my gosh. Like I said, like I said, we're a long way from that, but I love people like Tracy Ellis Ross. I think she's funny and she could do this funny, sad stuff. Regina Hall. Oh my gosh, Amber Ruffin. Anybody who's funny but can also hit like the right meaningful note of a thing.
Who do you think that would portray Scott well?
Oh gosh, Seth Rogen. What's his name? The guy from drawing a blank from Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh yeah, the tall one.
Yeah.
Jason
Segel. Jason Segel. Yes. I think Jack Black, I think might be a little old now, but I think he would hit
Yeah.
it perfectly because he can do that. And I love Jack Black so much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So what are your plans now for the next couple of months? You're just doing.
I've applied for like some fellowships and stuff. Like I said, I'm working on this project with my friend's book proposal. I have like at least 3 upcoming freelance stories that I'm working on right now simultaneously, which is really cool. We're learning to juggle that again and working on this book. I turn 50 next month, so I'm working on turn 50 and giving myself a very fabulous trip away rather than have like some big huge thing which no one can do right now.
Right.
I'm just, getting a fancy hotel for a couple of nights and asking people to come down one at a time and hang out.
That's a good idea. Like a fancy hotel in downtown Baltimore.
Yes.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Get one that, make sure that the spas are open because, they're all closed now with
I don't
COVID.
even need
Get one that has
right
a spa.
They have a spa. Honestly, I just need one. It's like on the water and it's got, they bring things to your room. That's all I really care about.
And also pay-per-view. So you can just sit there and watch, we get the clicker in your hand and I don't care if it's $19, I want to watch it.
Oh yeah. I just turned 50, you definitely get a $19 movie. Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I'm excited for your future and I can't wait to learn more and find out about your next book when you do finish or anything that you're writing that gets published, just keep me posted.
And I have to thank you so much. You were the first, literally, because I sat next to you at SEMA, literally the first person who said, I'd like you to come to my store. It was magical. It was like, because, my publicist was like, you should go. It'll be great. You'll meet people. And literally I sat down to have a drink and some lunch. And there you were next to me asking. And that to me was like, oh, this is what this is about. And I met so many people there. Like I had gone to New Orleans the year before and met people at Blue Cypress, and they were there. They came to my table. We were like, ah!
Well, I hope you stay a writer, and I hope you stay in the community because the book selling community is a warm and wonderful and friendly community. Booksellers and authors, they have this like instant love for each other, and they're always so kind to each other.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how to be anything else. I don't know how to be else,
and and if it wasn't me, it would have been somebody else. Everybody, I've had such great experiences meeting people and getting to know them, and authors and other booksellers, and it's just a really it's such a supportive community. So I would hope that you'd stay in it so you can take in all that love.
I don't know what else to do with my life.
Good.
So yes, I
will.
Well,
good. Good. So you will. So we're gonna.
I'm in.
You're in. So we'll see each other again for sure.
Right. Oh, for sure, Lauren. For sure.
For sure. Oh, good. Well, thank you so much, and I am excited about this, and I will be promoting it, and and maybe I can get you into a book club and and stuff like that.
I would love to, like I said, and let me know when I can share this with everyone because I think it's fun.
Yes, no, definitely. We'll send it to you next week. Thank you so much. My love to your son and your family.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Congratulations. Bye-bye. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.